Imagine waking up to find the world has shut its doors. 30 countries, from Canada to Germany to India, just cut off business with the United States overnight. Cargo ships are stranded at sea, postal warehouses overflowing with packages that will never be delivered. Trump is on stage, pounding his fist, but behind the curtain, he's facing an economic revolt unlike anything America has seen in a century. The dollar is sliding, factories are stalling, and even U.S. allies are turning their backs at the same time. This isn't a trade dispute. It's a coordinated cutoff. And the question hanging over Washington tonight is brutal. What happens to the world's biggest economy when the world walks away? The immediate trigger came from Washington itself. In August 2025, President Donald Trump reinstated steep tariffs on imports from Europe, Asia, and North America. The U.S. International Trade Commission confirmed that the average tariff rate rose to nearly 18.6%, the highest level since the Smoot-Hawley Act of 1930. Duties on Swiss goods climbed as high as 39%, while European Union members were hit with 15% across consumer and industrial categories. According to the World Trade Organization's September briefing, these measures increased the cost of U.S. imports by more than $90 billion in a single month. That policy shift collided directly with the global parcel system. Data from U.S. Customs and Border Protection shows that nearly 1.4 billion small packages entered the country last year under the de minimis threshold, exempt from tariffs if valued under $800. Once those exemptions vanished, 30 foreign postal authorities announced they would no longer process U.S.-bound packages. Germany's Deutsche Post said the compliance costs were unsustainable. India Post cited customs bottlenecks that would cripple delivery times. Mexico's Correos de Mexico called the new system unworkable. For American consumers, the result was immediate: a blackout on everyday items from books to electronics, clothing to specialty foods. The consequences spread beyond parcels. The Tax Foundation, a Washington-based research group, estimated in July that existing Trump tariffs already cost the average American household about $1,300 a year. That figure assumed package flows continued. With 30 postal systems withdrawing, analysts at the Peterson Institute for International Economics warned that the burden could climb by another $600 per household as shortages drove retail prices higher. What was once an abstract debate about trade balances now landed directly in kitchen budgets. Abroad, the response turned political. In Canada, Prime Minister Mark Carney publicly endorsed a nationwide Buy Canadian movement. An Angus Reid poll in early August showed that 85% of Canadians had replaced at least one United States product with a domestic equivalent since the tariffs began. Cross-border tourism collapsed. Statistics Canada reported that travel to the United States from Canada fell 23% in July compared with the year before, stripping nearly $3 billion Canadian dollars in revenue from United States businesses. In Europe, surveys conducted by the Danish Chamber of Commerce revealed that half of Danish consumers were avoiding American brands. In Sweden, 70% said they were considering boycotts, and 10% had already stopped buying United States products entirely. This consumer backlash drew in products with iconic American branding. French retailers began pulling Jack Daniel's whiskey from shelves. German supermarkets replaced Coca-Cola displays with local alternatives. The Wall Street Journal noted that sales of American spirits in Europe dropped 18% year-on-year in July, the sharpest contraction since 1991. What started as a postal suspension evolved into a cultural revolt, reshaping not only supply chains but also the identity of American goods abroad. At the same time, courts inside the United States began challenging the administration's authority. In early September, the United States Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit ruled that Trump had exceeded his powers under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act when extending tariffs to cover nearly $300 billion in imports. Though the tariffs remained in effect pending appeal, the Financial Times pointed out that their legal foundation was cracked. For investors, the ruling created uncertainty. Were these trade barriers permanent or a temporary political maneuver? Markets responded with volatility. Treasury yields spiked as foreign buyers stepped back from United States debt auctions. The Congressional Budget Office reported in August that annual interest payments on United States debt had already reached $1.2 trillion, consuming nearly one-third of federal revenue. Without steady foreign demand, the cost of financing only grew steeper. The dollar, once buoyed by safe haven flows, weakened sharply. The IMF's September currency monitor showed the dollar's share of global reserves falling below 55%, the lowest since records began in 1995. In contrast, the Chinese yuan gained traction, supported by Beijing's decision to fix its currency at 7.1 per dollar, the strongest setting in nearly a year. For China, timing was strategic. While Washington raised tariffs, Beijing was securing its grip on critical supply chains. According to Reuters, China controls over 90% of the world's rare earth magnet production. These magnets power electric vehicles, smartphones, and defense systems. In July, China's Ministry of Industry and Information Technology introduced new export rules requiring government approval for any shipment of rare earth oxides or alloys. Miss the quota, lose the license. The U.S. Geological Survey confirmed that 70% of American rare earth imports in 2024 originated directly from China. Even materials sourced from Japan or Estonia often pass through Chinese refineries before reaching U.S. markets. Trump threatened a 200% tariff on Chinese magnet exports if shipments slowed, but the numbers told another story. Without Chinese cooperation, the supply chain itself would disintegrate. Washington scrambled for alternatives. The Pentagon announced a $600 million expansion of MP Materials' rare earth mine in California, along with long-term contracts for Canadian and Australian suppliers. A Defense Department report to Congress conceded, however, that new mines would take between 5 and 7 years to reach full capacity. Meanwhile, demand for electric vehicles and renewable energy technology continued to climb. The International Energy Agency projected that global demand for rare earth elements would triple by 2030. In that context, U.S. production looked like a race being run from behind. By midsummer, the crisis had reached a midpoint revelation. Tariffs designed to protect U.S. industries were accelerating the very vulnerabilities they aimed to fix. As the Financial Times observed in August, Chinese exports to the U.S. actually rose in July because buyers rushed to beat new tariffs. Instead of shrinking dependency, the measures deepened it. That raised a question Washington could not easily answer. If tariffs push costs higher without reducing reliance, what tool remains? The escalation spread to consumer goods beyond strategic minerals. In Scotland, textile producer Jamieson & Smith announced it would stop shipping yarn to American retailers, citing tariffs that doubled landed costs. In Denmark, knitwear supplier Knitting for Olive suspended U.S. orders, leaving thousands of hobbyists without access to niche products. The Washington Post reported that some American small businesses faced bankruptcy as inventories dried up. This was no longer about macroeconomic charts. It was about artisans and retailers losing livelihoods overnight. Meanwhile, global trade blocs began to form in new alignments. Bloomberg reported that in July, China and Brazil settled more than $10 billion in trade directly in Yuan, bypassing the dollar entirely. India increased purchases of Russian oil paid in rupees, averaging 1.7 million barrels a day. The IMF noted that central banks purchased 244 metric tons of gold in the first quarter of 2025, the largest quarterly increase in history. Each transaction chipped away at the dollar's dominance, transaction by transaction, reserve by reserve. American consumers felt the double bind most sharply. Tariffs raised sticker prices on imports. The weaker dollar inflated costs further by reducing purchasing power abroad. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, import-driven inflation added 1.8 percentage points to consumer price inflation in July alone. Wages did not keep pace. Real disposable income fell 2.1% year-on-year, leaving households squeezed. Factories reported shrinking margins, retailers faced rising complaints, and consumers saw fewer choices on store shelves. Diplomatically, allies were no longer aligned. Germany's foreign minister said in late August that Berlin would consider countermeasures if U.S. tariffs persisted into 2026. Japan's trade ministry filed a formal complaint at the World Trade Organization, arguing that American duties violated agreed ceilings. Even Mexico, long tied to U.S. supply chains, suspended postal shipments as part of a broader standoff. Where Washington once dictated the rules, it now found itself isolated, confronting a coalition of 30 trading partners unwilling to comply. The narrative reached acceleration. Protests erupted outside the White House with banners reading, "Tariffs equal taxes." Trucking companies warned of layoffs as freight volumes dropped. The American Farm Bureau Federation reported soybean exports down 14% year-on-year, a direct casualty of retaliatory tariffs from China and the European Union. In Iowa, grain elevators stood half empty. In Michigan, auto parts suppliers cut shifts. Industrial America, once the constituency tariffs aimed to protect, was feeling the blowback. By early September, the question shifted again. Was the United States weaponizing trade at the cost of its own economic stability? Analysts at the Brookings Institution argued that the scale of tariffs amounted to an untested experiment. The Wall Street Journal quoted supply chain executives warning that decoupling from 30 countries simultaneously was, well, structurally impossible. The contradiction was clear. Policies aimed at securing independence were generating dependence on emergency measures, subsidies, and short-term stopgaps. In a warehouse on the edge of Los Angeles, pallets of unsent parcels sit under dim lights, each one tagged with a destination country that no longer accepts them. Germany, India, Mexico. 30 names in total. Each box a reminder that alliances can freeze overnight, that trade routes can reverse, that even the most powerful economy can find itself surrounded not by enemies at war, but by partners choosing absence. The question hanging in the silence is stark. How long can the United States hold its position when the world's reply is not confrontation, but withdrawal? We're glad you're enjoying this video. Please like and subscribe. Check out another video that is now on your screen.